It's Wednesday, August 3rd, and a rare weather pattern is about to impact the United States. And this rare weather pattern is going to bring some close to freezing temperatures up here in the northern Midwest and northern plains, which is very unusual for this time of year, especially in early September. We're normally not really expecting to see anything close to this, but up here in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and even northern North Dakota, we could potentially see some low 40s to even high 30s feels like temperatures. Then for pretty much the rest of the northern plains and northern Midwest, you're going to be seeing some incredible weather for this time of year, sitting around that 50s feels like temperature range. Now for the rest of the country, it's still going to be pretty nice temperature wise. You're still going to be in that mid 70s to mid 80s range, with the only exclusion being Florida, the Gulf Coast, southern Texas. And then also out here on the Pacific coast, you're going to likely be feeling some mid 90s, feels like temperatures instead. But luckily, as we go into the future, it looks like if you're up here pretty much anywhere north of the southeast and southern Great Plains, it looks like your temperatures are going to cool down as we go throughout this week as well. And then the weather pattern bringing those super cool temperatures is also going to bring a return of some severe weather out here to the Great Plains. Right out here centered on eastern Kansas, we have our first slight risk in multiple weeks. And this is also just going to be surrounded by a marginal risk, pretty much covering the same area for the same hazards. Then we have a pretty widespread risk of just general thunderstorms stretching all the way back from the Pacific coast southwest, and then quite a bit of the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys, as well as the Great Lakes region. Now, the main threat today is going to be some 60 to potentially 70-mile-an-hour damaging winds. I think it would be closer to that 60-mile-an-hour range. And then for our hail risk, we could actually see a return of some large hail, which is something we really haven't seen in a while. That's going to be focused on northeastern to just general eastern Kansas, where we could potentially see hail in excess of 2 to even 2.5 inches in diameter today in our main risk area. And then there is technically no outlined risk of tornadoes, although I wouldn't be surprised to see a risk that's non-zero, although it's pretty unlikely that we'll even see a tornado out here in our main risk area today at all. And then on top of those severe hazards, there is a pretty small conditional area right out here in central Missouri and far eastern Kansas, where we could potentially see a conditional threat of some flash flooding. We're really going to see around 1 to 2 inches of rain in this marginal risk area. And then we do have a couple more areas where we could see flash flooding in the country. One is going to be in South Florida, same with that 1 to 2 inches rain. Another marginal risk back here in the southwest or just general west, and a slight risk down here in the far southwest. And that slight risk, we could see 2 to 4 inches of rain, so a slightly elevated risk of flash flooding if you're in that. And then here's what the radar is going to look like today in our main risk area. We're going to see that's going to be calm, calm, calm all the way through the morning and even into the mid-afternoon before we see our storms initiate along a cold front and a elongated low pressure system, as well as that big trough digging in. There might even be a bit of a short wave in here, also helping to initiate these storms. And it looks like they're going to be somewhat supercellular and discrete at first, which would play into that hail threat quite a bit more, but it looks like they might congeal into a cluster as we go later into the day. And these storms would likely be done before the evening hours and that low level jet kicks in, which is one of the reasons why that tornado threat is quite a bit lower, with these storms almost being a 0% risk. But it looks like it's going to be a pretty isolated sector of storms really focused on eastern Kansas. But if you are out here, they could bring some isolated damaging gusts, potentially even 70 miles an hour, as they become more outflow dominant later in their lifespan. But it looks like it's mostly just going to be a wind and hail threat today. Then moving a little bit eastward, we can see some widespread thunderstorm activity, which is really going to start in the morning hours today and kind of persist the entire day. This is going to extend all the way pretty much throughout the entire Midwest, all the way up into Michigan. And this would just be for that conditional threat, some rain and some gusty winds. And we can see it kind of traces our trough, which is going to be the main causer for this weather out here. And then the last area of interest is going to be out here in the southwest. Once again, we could get some monsoon conditions out here associated with a high pressure system, bringing some organizing shear to these storms. and a couple of various troughs, which are just areas of rising air along some areas of convergence. And then because of that, we could potentially see some storms bringing some severe gusts out here. Is that likely? It's not super likely, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some strong outflow driven storms bringing some strong wind gusts out here, specifically in southern Arizona. I think this will be the hotspot, but pretty much everywhere highlighted by the SPC for that thunderstorm risk, you could see some thunderstorms today. And then here are 500 millbar winds, and we didn't really see that big trough digging in over parts of the Midwest and plains, bringing most of our severe weather today. We can actually see potentially a bit of a kink in our trough, potentially even a short wave, but the main thing is going to be a lot of flow out here, and kind of this glancing blow by our jet max, helping to initiate these storms by the mid-afternoon, bringing quite a bit of organizing shear, increasing that hail threat. And we can also see along that line of where the rest of our thunderstorms are expected to be kind of tracing where that flow is. So that's going to be the main thing, helping to initiate and sustain those storms as well today out here. And then here's the storm environment from our main risk area, bringing that threat of some potentially large hail on that 2 to 2.5 inch in diameter range, and also some isolated 60 to 70 mile an hour gusts. And here is why we have quite a bit of organizational shear. So definitely some strong updrafts coupled with a big mid-level lapse rate, 8.1 Celsius decreasing per kilometer, a lower freezing level, and some cape up here near our freezing level. That is why we're expecting to see some large hail out here today in our main risk area in eastern Kansas. And for that damaging wind threat, we have some favorable mixing for that. So some dry air loft and a pretty big temperature dew point spread leading to a higher storm base that also can increase evaporative cooling and potentially increase the strength of those wind gusts. Our downdraft gate isn't anything super crazy, but still 1100, helping to fuel that. And then our relative humidity is going to be another thing, helping with that evaporative cooling and also strengthening of our wind gust, being around that 50% range. So our precipitable water isn't super crazy, but that could also help with that as well. Then for just general severe weather, we have a moist environment, 64 dew point, some pretty nice low level lapse rates with potentially some capping. That doesn't really look like that will be an issue with these storms. And then definitely sufficient cape for severe weather, nearing 3,000 cape. Now for our tornado risk, it's going to be pretty small because our shear parameters aren't going to be great and our storm bases are going to be higher. But as we go later into the day, that non-zero chance being slightly bigger, it's still going to be pretty close to zero. And I don't really think we're going to see any tornadoes out here today, but that risk will increase very slightly as we go later into the day.